Hey there, we've got a very exciting episode lined up for you today because with me in the studio is Suhani Jalota. Suhani is a Baldwin Scholar from Duke University, an economics and global health major. She won the 2016 College Woman of the Year award. She's a Melissa and Doug Entrepreneurship Fellow, a TEDx speaker, and CEO and founder of Myna Mahila Foundation. So hi Suhani, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much.
How did your interest develop in this early on?
My father comes from the Indian government, so he's been posted in lots of different places. And because of that, I think I've just observed him working on social development issues and infrastructural issues, figuring out water and sanitation for different small towns and cities and all of that. And then also observing my mother, who's worked on corporate social responsibilities, and she's really worked with local women to try to develop their exhibitions and just try to teach them embroidery and a lot of things where she's worked and tried to employ local people. So it started in 11th grade when I was just figuring out an economics 600 essay project where I went to the Dharavi Slums and I realized that public sanitation is a big issue, but I didn't realize to what extent was it that complicated. So my 600 essay topic was looking at the efficiency of operation and maintenance of public toilets in the Dharavi Slums of Mumbai. And at first I'd just gone there and my project was all about why is there a lack of toilets, but I realized there's no lack of toilets. There are 451 toilet blocks, with each block having about 32 cubicles.
Wow.
That's only in one slum in Dharavi. So there are more than enough toilets. But the problem was that they were not being maintained and operated. So then I wanted to understand why are they not being maintained and operated and which ones are better than others,
right,
and why are they different. And so the community members, the ones that they were running, were much better because they essentially were much more incentivized to work for themselves.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's when I first realized the importance of public participation and of community building. And then just going there for so long, you start to realize the way they really live their lives, and then look at it much more than me going into a community and understanding how they function. Then I'm immersing myself into the whole community. And so Suhani then became a part of what the women, the kind of self-help group these women had created in the Dharavi slums and the Govandi slums. It was just getting to know them and them getting to know me with absolutely no agenda in my mind. And then after that, when we realized that I've been going there for so long, I'm getting this immense amount of education and resources at Duke University, and these women have such incredible experiences and they have the problems and the stories that we really had set up an extremely good ecosystem to be able to now create our own thing.
Wow.
And it was always supposed to be our own thing, so that we would create a corporation of our own, or we would create a company of our own, or a foundation of our own, that women from these communities would then be able to come up and say, this is ours and we are starting this from scratch, and we're not just employed in a company, we have this company. It's ours. And then these women said that, well, we want to make something that normally other people would not be making or selling in these communities.
Right.
And so I think we just, we just came down to pads and there's things that women are very afraid to speak about. And if we wanted to create some kind of behavior change and a movement around what we were doing, we needed to be able to target those practices that were most tabooed in society. And so I think we never started off with saying we want to be a sanitary pad company, but we always started off with we want to empower women. And how do we empower them? We have about 16 women on board now in our staff, still involving the same women in the slums and training them in business.
And they're literate, the women?
These women, no, in fact, they've all dropped out from school very early on. So 6th grade, 7th grade, but they have this hunger to learn.
So Suhani, after 12th grade, you went off to Duke University. How did those 4 years play a role in shaping your goals further?
Immensely. Duke was definitely a life-changing experience for me. From the very beginning, I was involved in the focus program at Duke. So this is first year, first semester. And the focus program is essentially a couple classes that you would take with all other students who are involved in a similar themed topic, and you live together for the first year. So I was in the global health focus, and the first 2 classes that I took in that were vulnerable populations and global health and technology for health. And this is coming out of high school, the first classes that I take at Duke, and they're just these super interesting topics. And I was like, wow, I already fell in love with the professors and the classes, and I was like, this is great. In the second semester, I was working on a Gates Foundation project to reinvent the toilet.
Wow.
Now that's something that I had just worked on toilets for a while in the past, and I really wanted to work on that as well, but I just wasn't sure how. And then I found out that Melinda Gates is a Duke alum, and she's invested so much money into a lot of the programs that they're doing to do a lot of that research at Duke. And so I ended up doing an independent project with them, and it was essentially where they'd give you money and you could do whatever you wanted anywhere in the world for a project of your choice. And so I had actually worked in Raigad district of Maharashtra, where I was working for the first time in a rural area and in a village called Shedashi, a village where essentially everyone was openly defecating and not a single person was using a toilet, even though they had water connection, even though they had the funds and the money that they could afford to build toilets. It was mainly cultural barriers, and there I'd gone to understand what were the cultural barriers and why was it still holding people back when they were so close to Mumbai that they essentially people know the better practices. It's not like they're completely isolated, but yet what was holding them back. And I think that summer was very, very indicative in me understanding just the politics of the situation, how all of that played into what was actually happening with the government schemes in reality in these small hamlets of these villages.
Oh my God, that must have been an eye-opener.
Definitely, yeah. And then I decided that, I've just focused a lot on sanitation. I've learned more about India, and I want to now get a more global perspective. So that's when that summer I received Baldwin Scholar funding to go to South Africa, and I was in Cape Town for about 10 weeks. And I was interning with a place called the Economic Policy Research Institute. And so I was there essentially working with them on a UNICEF DFID funded project to increase enrollment of girls in primary school in Nigeria. And then after that, so when my junior year started, I think it just so happened that I was involved in these social entrepreneurship competitions. I had come up with various ideas around different problems. So at first we were dealing with sexual assault, and we'd come up with a mobile app that would help doctors to be able to treat these victims as patients. I'd worked on oral rehydration therapy, where we're trying to generate awareness on using creative tools such as puppetry. And this is all in these incredible teams that I had of amazing students at Duke, and so I learned so much from all of them as well. So there, an opportunity came up, the Millicent Doug Entrepreneurs Program, where essentially I could be an entrepreneurship fellow, and they would train about 15 students every year. They would mentor them. We would go to New York. We would stay at Millicent Doug, which is a toy company, and who essentially fund this program, their house, and then also be able to learn from them, be able to pitch to Duke alums in New York, and then be able to network with them, and then have lots of funding to be able to start our company. So I was essentially given seed money from this program. And so I came back to India that summer to work on using the seed funding to work on the startup. And not just that, actually, I was also doing my thesis at the same time, and a lot of that research had to happen in Mumbai at the same time. And my thesis looking at the effect of slum redevelopment on child health outcomes. So it was an economics thesis where I was trying to collect some quantitative data when people are essentially relocated from these slum communities into buildings that are essentially provide subsidized housing by the government. How does that impact a child's health outcomes, and looking at their stunting levels, because there's very, very little data, almost next to none, quantitatively about how this relocation process is actually affecting people's daily lives. I think Duke helped me really understand as well that quantitative evidence and actually substantiating what you say with the story, because I was always a very story person. I was always a more qualitative person. And then after that, essentially, I was also working and interning at Dalberg, which is a development consulting firm. And it seemed like a perfect place for me, because it was essentially providing a lot of business strategies to development case scenarios. It's definitely something that I'd recommend to students, that if they want to do consulting, but they want to do the meaningful consulting that essentially wants to create social impact, but they don't want to go down the charity route, I think this is a really, really great opportunity. And my thesis had taught me that the quantitative data research was something that I lacked big time, and that I needed to harness those skills more. So I'll be actually working at a data analysis firm. So it's called ID Insight, International Development Insight. Their head office is based out of San Francisco, but they have an office in Delhi, which is where I'll be working. And it focuses on impact evaluations and economic development. So it provides the technical arm for clients such as the World Bank, Gates Foundation, UNICEF, the governments and all that.
But that's really interesting that you're actually covering all ground to make sure that this wholesome social entrepreneur in you comes out. Yeah?
Exactly. Because now I think after you start, you realize where you don't know things. And you have to be very honest about admitting that I don't know most things yet, because you're very young, and at this age, I just have a lot of passion and a lot of energy to do a lot, and I think that could push you to do the things that you don't know, which later on, maybe even 5 years down the line, would be very difficult to do.
Right, so talking about Myna Foundation and your being in Delhi, does it run by itself without your active intervention?
Operationally, it runs, and it runs very well. It's even grown internally. So like the number of women that we've had is increased from 5 to 10 when I was in there, and then increased from 10 to 15 again when I was in there. Over the last couple of weeks, actually, we have expanded to about 6 different slum communities where we've already started to sell pads. So we essentially make 3 products now. The first product was a sanitary pad, a basic rectangular one that we had essentially started to make when we first had conceived the idea, where we decided that if women don't use pads at all, this is what they can use.
Right.
That time we were very mistaken as to how aspirational women were, even with products that they had never used, just because of television and what they see on TV. And so then we actually started to make a second type of product called maternity pads. And these are pads that are used during times of delivery in hospitals by nurses and midwives. And that's when we realized that we had to actually go in for a formal marketing team. We had to have presentations. We had to do things that we just had never had to do at a local door-to-door level. The third product is what we have just started about a couple weeks ago with the Excel-sized pads. And this is the aspirational product that anyone would use that product. And so over the last couple of weeks, we've been able to sell over 500 packets or so.
Wow.
And now we're selling about 50 packets a day in just a single community.
This is some amazing work you're doing, and I'm sure people watching the show are saying, here's a role model I want to be like. So just to guide them, there are lots of people probably wanting to be in the social entrepreneurship space. So what can we say to them? What should they study? What kind of courses should they do? And how should they make an entry into this field?
Yeah, so first I would highly suggest for them to understand what social entrepreneurship is really all about. It's not charity and it's not a business. It's something in between where you're essentially creating social impact, and while you're creating profit or while you're making money. So your motive of the business is twofold, which makes it more complicated and which makes it more difficult for you to achieve both. And by the way, the book How to Change the World by David Bornstein about social entrepreneurs around the world is an amazing book to read, and it really tells you the impact that social entrepreneurs can have on the world, even just a single person on an entire country. Wow. So the first thing that you should do after understanding all of this thing is definitely to do it yourself. In terms of courses, I think technical skills is the first thing and probably the most important thing that you can learn and do. And this is something that I had never obviously done myself until very late, and then I realized that on the field there's a lot that I want to give and a lot that I just cannot give because I just don't know it. And that involves things like, even if you have engineering skills, if you have even finance skills, accounting skills, all of that is super necessary and important, and it can help in any aspect of the business.
Or environmental engineers.
Environmental engineers, any technical skills, statistics.
Yeah.
Extremely important for understanding impact, for understanding even just like understanding your population, for research as well.
Another thing I think college students would wonder is, how do they actually make that entry into the field? Do they join an NGO, or does everybody need to do a startup? So what would you say?
There are definitely various routes, and I know entrepreneurs that have taken all different types of things. I think for students that are entering college, this is a time of your life when you're essentially going to a place which has a gazillion resources, and you can only ever avail like 1% of those things while you're there. So pushing yourself to be able to avail more opportunities there, and talking to different professors that are involved in that space. Maybe if you're really interested in, let's say, understanding a certain disease, and you don't, at that time you don't really have a startup idea, but you want to do something with this disease, or something with, understanding more about it, or you have a certain idea that you want to implement, maybe do some kind of lab work there, and then go from there and see how you could possibly innovate that and then patent it and then create a business out of it. A lot of students that a lot of my friends and colleagues at Duke, I know that followed this track. Essentially, they reach out to tons and tons of people. So they send out emails to over 50, 60 people at once, and this is just asking them, can you just listen to my ideas? I just want to talk. And then after that, it's availing those programs that provide you with the funding. Funding is essential for anything and everything that you do. So I think there, figuring out which resources you can avail there. There are lots of competitions that give you prize money. There are research grants that you can apply for if your the focus of area is more research oriented. There are a lot of professors that you could join in on their research and they give you money. So there are various avenues. There's one coming up, social mentor competition with Penn and University of Mumbai, I think, coming up, with IIT Mumbai coming up in January. Oh, okay. So they're just the things that come up all the time. It's like $25,000 in prize money for your startup. So I think just being able to implement whatever you've set out to do is important, having that perseverance to be able to do it. Most people get weeded out in that stage. Oh. So somebody who's entering should understand all of those things, and then also be able to understand that this is probably a long-term thing that they're getting into. Because if it's just something that they want to do over a summer, they're better off doing a project.
Right.
But if they're trying to do something that, and not just resume building, a lot of times those things just don't work out because you're not genuinely interested in the people there.
Right.
You're more interested in yourself.
Right.
I'd also say that you should explore different types of sectors.
Right.
So because the entrepreneurship sector is not a sector on its own, it's an interdisciplinary approach. Understanding the civil sector, the social sector space, and then also understanding the private or the corporate space, and understanding the public sector space. All of those three different spaces are very important because they play into each other, and the kind of world that we'll be creating in the future, which is all about the public-private partnership and all about involving the people in this design thinking approach and human-centered design, we need to understand all different aspects and different sectors.
Right. And another question that they probably have is the other end of the spectrum, the revenue end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So there is this notion that there isn't much revenue in the social space, and from your experience, you're saying you have balanced it out. But what would you want to say to them?
Yeah, there's definitely less money in that, because if you had foregone that social impact motive, you would have made a lot more. Sure. So I think it depends on the kind of, you have to be very creative, and I think this space, because it's so exciting, because you can do whatever you want and however you want to shape it, but as long as the human-centered design approach, as we call it, the customer and the people are the center of everything.
Right, I think that's fantastic. But tell me, what's your long-term goal with all this? Where do you see yourself 10 years down the line?
Again, the most difficult question of the day. I don't know. So I thought I knew, in fact, and I tell everybody I want to be the Minister of Health in India, like 30 years down the line.
We'll be a lucky country to have you there.
So I'm preparing for a PhD in economics now, but again, things could change. So ideally after 2 years, I'd apply for that, and then after that, be able to work at an international organization, and then possibly work at the ministry. I've still not let go of that dream.
No, I'm sure you're going to fulfill all your dreams, but I'm also sure you're going to come up with a lot of new things along the way and keep exploring those as well.
Let's see, hopefully.
So I'm sure in this space you have a lot of personal gratification, but talk about 1 or 2 special moments that you've had that have touched you. About
3 or 4 years ago, right before I'd gone to Duke actually, I celebrated my last birthday in India in the Dharavi Slums, and this was with the women that I'd been working with in the past. And that day, I was just going there to meet them. Like, I thought that none of them would even know that it's my birthday, and I just actually just gone there. And then I enter the office, and it's decorated, and it says Suhani everywhere, and then these women are all standing with these 6 feet bouquets. There were these 2 6-feet bouquets. So they're just all pooled in money to buy that.
So sweet.
And along with that, they're giving me this leather purse that again, they're all pooled in money to buy for me. And they essentially got these women to come from all over Mumbai and some other places like Pune and all, and they were essentially just there, and they were all celebrating together.
So sweet.
And I hadn't met some of those women. They introduced me, and they were all, each of them, the women that I knew, then spoke about me for about 2 minutes, about like what they knew of me and what they were expecting and how much faith they had. And this was like a really, really good parting gift to me before the US that really reminded me of like why I was going there and what it all meant to me.
So amazing, really, so amazing. Yeah, and that's the measure of impact that you're having, right?
And what they're having on me, yeah.
So thank you so much for being on the show, Suhani. It was such a pleasure having you. I think people have a lot to learn from you. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much.
Please click the subscribe button below. Like me at facebook.com/ChetChat101. Follow my Twitter handle ChetChat101 or at Instagram ChetChat101. Please leave your comments in the sections below. And if you'd like me to feature any particular college, please let me know. Thank you.